and welcome back to Managing Your Mental Health During COVID-19. So again, I'm Susan Armstrong. I have a fantastic guest today. I've known her for quite a while myself, Dr. Rita Lustgarten, and she's coming to us today from Dubai. So I'm going to read Dr. Rita's bio to you, and I have to say, all the years that I've known her, I knew a lot of this stuff, but there's still stuff in here that I wasn't aware of. So Dr. Rita Lustgarten is a master influencer, transformational leader, management consultant, business growth strategist, a dynamic speaker, moderator, seminar leader, and facilitator. So she's also a humanitarian and a philanthropist. She consults with companies globally, along with working with entrepreneurs and business leaders across industries to help them to rise to higher levels of influence and distinguish themselves as thought leaders in the marketplace and grow their businesses and income exponentially. So she's CEO of Women on the Leading Edge, a global leadership and business development firm, and Global Visionaries, Inc. So this is a strategic brand consulting firm. At Women on the Leading Edge, she inspires women to go beyond where they presently are, achieving unprecedented levels of success. And I can vouch for that one. She has worked as an advisor to top leaders in the financial, environmental, technology, and retail industries, as well as nonprofits and several celebrities, and consulting with companies globally. Dr. Rita's partial client list includes Exxon, General Electric, Motorola, The Gap, Citibank, Smith Barney, Google, Groupon, Williams-Sonoma, the Chicago Tribune, and Lucent Technologies. Dr. Rita was recently featured in Forbes magazine as a game changer for her outstanding work with women business leaders globally. So she holds 2 master's degrees, one in clinical psychology and another in human and organizational development. And she also has a doctorate in human development and organizational systems with a specialization in women's global leadership. She was awarded a fellowship for her outstanding work in the field of women in leadership and her concomitant contribution to a national initiative called Creativity, Longevity, and Wisdom, a project for the Institute for Social Innovation. She's received the prestigious honor of being knighted for her philanthropic endeavors and long service to humanity. Knighted, Dr. Rita. I did not know that.
Yes, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have you. And, you know, when I was thinking about this series and doing this series, it took all of 3 minutes for me to figure out the topics. And then it didn't take much longer than that for me to figure out who I actually wanted to speak to offer some help, some motivation, some uplifting, inspiring news to people, and some assistance for how they could get through this. And of course, your name was the very first one on my list. So today, I wanted to talk about inspiration and purpose. And, you know, in neuroscience, when they talk about brain health, there's been several studies that have come out that says part of a healthy brain and therefore a healthy body and a healthy life is this idea of purpose. So to have a purpose, which I find really interesting, because I know a lot of people struggle to find purpose and find inspiration in their life. And I also know you're an expert on this. Okay, don't tell Dr. Rita, but according to me, she's an expert on everything. So it has to be 30 minutes and not longer. So inspiration and purpose, Dr. Rita, are they the same or are they different? Because I have to admit, when I think inspiration, I do think purpose, like the two are kind of linked for me. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm going to back up for a minute and I'll come to your question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So connection is absolutely essential for all of us. And I really do believe that connection is what gives us meaning and purpose. And I think one of the most difficult things going on now is the isolation for people, disconnection, whether it's for work, community, friends, lovers. I mean, some people are staying together, but many people are not staying together. And many people are caught in different countries as well. Right? There are children who are separated from their parents until recently. I mean, they were separated for 6 weeks. They couldn't get back because their parents were overseas. And so connection is everything, I think, to all of us. And whether you talk about it on an emotional level, professional level, you know, they talk about your network is your net worth and how relationship is the new currency. It's all about connection. And inspiration, at least for me, is connecting to something greater than yourself. Okay? And I do feel it's absolutely essential for all of us to be connected to something greater than ourselves. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk today about inspiration, because we've got a vertical connection that most people don't develop, which is a vertical connection is something, a connection to one's soul, a connection to something greater than oneself. And that's where purpose comes in, because purpose tends to be that thing that, when we are clear about it, defines us in relationship to something greater than ourselves. And I'll talk about purpose a bit. So they're not exactly the same, but it is the connection to something greater that where inspiration comes, whether that's a creative idea, whether it's something, but it is connecting to something that is larger than oneself and greater than oneself.
Okay, so now I have a couple of questions based on that.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense to me. But as you were talking, and I think anybody who's watching this that knows me knows that I spend a lot of time trying to find that connection and develop that connection to myself, to who I am at the core. Is it possible that people are connected to their higher self, but without being consciously aware of it? So let me explain for a minute. Because now, as you were talking, I'm thinking about all the people that now during lockdown are engaging in probably what was a passion all along, but they hadn't developed it, like baking or sewing. You know, people are getting very creative with activities and TikTok videos and dancing and doing all kinds of things. So when I think about that, I always think that we all come with our natural talents, right? With our gifts. So a lot of people I have people in my life that are fantastic bakers. You know, they can bake like the most amazing cakes and pies. I can't bake anything to save my life. And I think that that's a natural talent and something they would get enjoyment from. And I'm finding a lot of people are engaging in that right now, but I don't know if they're consciously aware that that's an inspiration, you know, that's part of their soul. Is that
I wouldn't necessarily call that inspiration. What I would say is going on is that we live in an extremely extroverted culture, all of us. You know, I've been in 13 different countries in the last year and a half, 2 years. And there's a lot of similarities throughout, you know, human beings and what they want and what they strive for and what we all want and really strive for. And so we're very extroverted. And when I was talking about a vertical connection, we have a vertical connection, which is where inspiration comes from. And it is connecting to something greater, whether you want to call that source or God or soul, or, you know, it's one of the things that I had said to you the other day. When you think about we define ourselves, how we define ourselves makes a difference in what we have access to. And when we can define ourselves, not just in and of ourselves, but to a greater potential or a greater source of what I'll talk in a couple of minutes about purpose, it redefines us. It gives us more possibility. It gives us greater opportunity. It gives us greater access. And so in an extroverted culture, you have a horizontal connection going on between you and the world, okay? So most people are based in, you know, in my leadership work, I talk about the soul-ego axis. And the horizontal axis is the axis of the ego. And it is our relationship to the world, our relationship to the body. The vertical connection is something that is the potential of developing it is there for every single human being. But it takes a real focused intention and cultivation over a period of years to really connect in that way.
But are there things people can do to start that right now? Because this seems like a perfect time where we're not having to get up early in the morning and commute, you know, to take that 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Well, I think the way people are accessing a little of that is what you were talking about, which is because we can't go outside and engage in our normal habitual way of living, we are drawing on other talents within ourselves, and we are being asked to be more creative around our lives. Now, some people are having easier times than others, okay? But I think to get in touch with a greater purpose, and I work with people not just for their personal purpose in branding, but also the purpose to define the purpose of the work they do, because your company has a purpose as well. Your work has a purpose depending on who you are. So sometimes those purposes are aligned and sometimes they're not, but it's important to be able to define it. And when you can define your connection to something greater than yourself, it begins to bring you a greater sense of meaning. When it comes to your work, it answers why your work is important. It gives you meaning, and it also leads into what you're here for, what you're here to contribute, which eventually becomes your legacy. So there is this is a very strong theme I focus on, which is purpose, meaning, contribution. And that all comes in through being connected up to something greater. Because a brick, as I said to you the other day, aspires to be more than a brick. It aspires to be part of a building. And that would be my definition of spiritual, outside of any kind of religion, which I'm much more a philosopher than part of any kind of religion. And I do feel that it's essential that each of us, that spiritual connection really is a connection to something greater. And when you are connected in that way, then you start being fed by a source that's always available, that is infinite, that is, exquisite, and it isn't based on conditions. It isn't based on conditions, you see. So there might be certain conditions that allow, certain access to be a little easier, more available, but it's not really based on conditions. And so you start shifting out of a conditioned way of being and start becoming a creative force in your own life.
I do actually love that analogy about a brick isn't just a brick. It aspires to be more than just a brick. It aspires to be part of a building. And I like that because that makes sense to me, right? What are we aspiring to be part of? So how does purpose then differ, or how does purpose come out of inspiration?
Inspiration is the connection. I mean, it's to be inspired, it's to be open and developing that vertical relationship to something greater than yourself. Through that inspiration comes your purpose, which is a more defined way of giving a larger sense of meaning to your life and to what you're doing here and to your legacy. But that keeping that connection, that vertical connection, is something that you want to cultivate ongoingly. I mean, you don't just do it on a Monday and then you check in again on a Friday. It's something that you cultivate and you develop over time. And then, when a lot of people talk about getting downloads, and I don't call anything downloads, but it's like it is that fluid connection that you have to a greater sense of wisdom, which also gives you a greater sense of possibility and also brings into your life a much greater sense of opportunity. And one of the things, since my work is about growing influencers and thought leaders, one of the things that I have noticed in all the influencers that I'm connected to and have had the privilege and honor to know and meet is every single one of them who are authentic influencers. I'm not talking about the term that they use in social media, because there's nothing wrong with that. But I look at influencers in a much larger way. But every single influencer that I know is dedicated to something greater than themselves. And it is through that dedication and through that connection and through bringing in this greater sense of meaning to all the details of what they do and produce in the world that allows them to make a significant difference and impact on other people's lives. And the larger that platform, expands, the greater the significant impact and difference they can make, and the greater the income that people make. Because I see the money that you make as a product of one's purpose, of being engaged in meaningful work and wanting to impact other people's lives and make a difference.
So how does one start this? If somebody's never thought about this, before. How do you get in touch with that something greater than yourself?
Several ways.
Yeah, I know it's a hard question, and I'm smiling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the work. It's the work I do with people. It's not a quick fix kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there are many ways. I mean, one is, it's like coming to know oneself. Coming to know oneself more essentially outside their conditioning of who they're supposed to be and who they should be, because we all have like a.
You have to talk about that. You have to talk about that.
Yeah.
They are versus who they should be.
Exactly, because we all have a certain conditioning, that comes through our parents or our parents' parents or our parents' parents, right? And when you live what I call more of an unconscious life, you become like your mother and like your father. But I believe that each of us have absolutely, every single one of us has an infinite potential within them to be realized in this given life. And that life is absolutely precious, if not also sacred. And that we have a sole obligation to realize our lives, who we are, what matters to us. And through the realization of who we are and what matters to us, we contribute to the world and we change the world. And when you are living from, when you're living from purpose, people, there's a lot of research that's been done on this. People who live from purpose tend to sleep better. They have more fulfilled lives. They are happier. And they live longer, actually.
Yeah, I did read a neuroscience article from a neuroscientist about that very thing, that a healthy life comes from having purpose. I think the hard thing is it's not a tangible thing, is it? It's not something you can go and buy at the store, as you were saying, in our
No, absolutely not. But it can influence and seep into everything you do. You see, everything you do. There is this, so there is a auto manufacturing company in Japan. I can't remember which one it was. I might have told you this story. And you had all these people just now. These are the people who can't work from home. These are people who are suffering, unlike some entrepreneurs. We're all having our levels of suffering, right? And how we manage it. But people who work in factories and manufacturing plants, they can't work from home, right? They're the ones that are really, really, I think it's a great, great hardship for them. And so you have these people who have been working in this auto company. They've been doing the same thing, like putting the peg into the hole. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but something like that, nothing creative, every single day. And the level of productivity in the company had really dropped significantly. And the level of engagement had dropped significantly. And so one day, the CEO of the company gave a very large talk, and he invited, for the first time, because he never does, usually has these talks not with all of the people that work in the company. Usually it's at the board meetings, or it's for the upper management, middle management. But he invited everyone to this talk, and he shared with them the mission and purpose of his company. And all of a sudden, it was like everything changed for these people. All of a sudden, the people in the manufacturing plants in the factory were doing the same exact thing, but for the first time, maybe ever, what they were doing took on a certain meaning. They felt they were part of something. They felt that they were part of something larger, that they were doing some good in the world by this, what felt like a totally insignificant, irrelevant thing. It changed. The productivity level went up, the engagement level went up, the stock went up. Everything changed in that company just from that conversation.
And I know there's been a lot of studies to support that if people understand how their contribution fits into the bigger picture, they're more likely to be motivated, engaged, productive, happier. Yeah, absenteeism goes down, lateness goes down, stress goes down.
Exactly, because everyone wants to be, one of the things I talk about, which is this, that each of us have these two rivers that flow through us. And one is the river of purpose, and the other is the river of belonging. And, when we're very, very young, I actually believe connection is everything. It's just that it's much more obvious when you're young if you don't get the appropriate connection. then you can see deficiencies in development, mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically, right? I mean, they had these, they did all this research with monkeys, and they did, they had two different sets of testing going on. One is that they had the baby monkeys with their mothers being fed every day, and the others is they had the baby monkeys being fed with wired, no one there, but just they were fed every single day, the same exact schedule. And the monkeys that weren't connected to their mother, but were still fed every single day, the same schedule, became extremely aggressive when they got older, extremely aggressive. They were almost like autistic. And so belonging is the end all and be all, really, at the beginning. And when you get the appropriate connection, then you are in a certain flow and rhythm of developing the essence of who you are, which leads to your purpose. And, those two rivers go side by side all through our lives. The difference is that we often leave our essence for connection when we don't get the connection that we need and want. So we take detours from the essence of who we truly are. And most of us don't recognize that we're on a detour. So you have to recognize you're on a detour, and then you have to come back. You asked how to recognize purpose, right? And then to be in that flow of one's essence and who you really are and what you're really here for. Then from there you when relationships come from that place, then you have authentic relationships. And then you have a life that sustains, the beauty and the greater potential of who you are and what you're here for.
Oh, so that's really interesting. So now I'm thinking about all the people, because I always say that, when we're young, we learn what masks we have to wear to get what we want. So I think it's that connection piece you were talking about.
Yes.
We learn how we have to behave and what we need to say and not say in order to get the love from our parents or, make our friends happy, but to feel like we belong. And I think sometimes what we learn what masks we need to wear in what situation to get that connection and love that we want, we don't learn to take those off. So we don't unlearn, and we continue to wear those masks. And I can't even tell you, and I'm sure you see the same thing, I know you do, how many people I see today who are in jobs that they're not happy at, they're not fulfilled. They have no connection to the job whatsoever, but they're doing it because that's what they were raised to do, so to speak. I mean, how many physicians do I know that actually aren't happy being a physician, but that's what their parents raised them to be, if you will, when meanwhile, they'd rather be a stockbroker or, something else. So is this what we're talking about? Is recognizing where you've gone off that path and you're still wearing that mask to fit in, to feel connected?
Yes. It's, you can call it different things. You can call it a mask. Carl Jung, who's one of my great mentors, he would call it a persona. Another way of understanding it is all the things we do for love, all the crazy things we've done for love and how many times we've left ourselves for that love. And, another way of thinking about this is, these are the patterns that we've created in order to survive a less than optimal life. Okay. I meet people, even some people who think they had a phenomenal life, but I look at them and I can tell exactly how they were organized, and they didn't have a phenomenal life. But we live in stories, and some of those stories are stories that limit us and bind us, and some of those stories are liberating stories, and some of those stories keep us out of reality. And which is another whole thing, which is the only place that there is truly a power to change is in the present. When you're not in reality, you can't access that power. But going back to what you asked about, yes, we have certain survival patterns. It's the ways in which we've survived. And those patterns we get very strongly identified with. We think that's who we are.
Right.
Okay? The deepest change is not just in what we do or how we do it. There's 3 levels of change I've talked about, but in who we are in the matter of anything we do. And when you can start shifting your own identity, then you start opening up a whole plethora of opportunities and possibilities that just weren't accessible to you in that limited identity that you have. But yes, that identity is about our conditioning, and it's about the ways we survived. And we all have different personas, whether it's the achiever or the good girl or the bad boy or the manipulator or the healer or all the things that we take on in order to gain, I mean, you could look at your mask, and if you look at what you do to gain love, connection, avoid some kind of pain, or gain some kind of control. If you look in those 4 areas, you'll be able to identify which most people think is themselves.
Right.
You'll identify your survival patterns.
So the mask that you wear to get love,
It's,
connection,
yes,
escape pain,
avoid pain,
and
gain some kind of control.
gain control, of course.
Yeah.
Conveniently, that would be the one that I complete transparency. This is why I know Dr. Rita so well, is we've been working on this together for a very long time. But I love what you just said. What are you leaving yourself for? And I think that's a really powerful question, right? What are you leaving your true self for? Coupled with those 4 areas, I think is a very good meditation or reflection for people, because I think for the most part, a lot of us do it and are not even consciously aware that we do it. And that's part of my work. As you know, my entire, purpose, my entire goal is to help people live happier lives, because I'm so well acquainted with all of the things we do to keep ourselves stuffed down and stuck and, connected. So this whole thing about connection has got me wondering, as you were talking about this, we are, the saying, we're all in this together. On one level, I get that. Everybody around the world is suffering the same way. On another level, I want to rebel against that and say, no, we're not. We're all alone in our houses, right? We're really not together. So what effect do you think this issue of connection is having on people's mental health right now? Because we're connected. I mean, a lot of us stay connected like this via Zoom or Skype or, on the telephone, but we're actually not getting the physical connection. We're not getting the energy from somebody else, the warmth of that hug or that touch. Do you think that's having an effect on people's mental health?
I'm sure. I mean, I think the challenge now is, it's obvious, but several things. One is to really live into the question of what is this an opportunity for those of us who have been so extroverted. I mean, I'm a very active person, very social. I'm always moving, traveling, connecting to people. So I've been in lockdown for, I don't know, I have to look at the calendar, at least 8 weeks, right?
Yes, it has.
And also I remember, a week and a half ago, my son said to me, Mom, do you think we'll ever be able to hug and kiss each other again? I said, of course. I said, I could never live without that, And I don't think you can either. But I think it's going to be time. I do think we're in a lot of unknown territory. And I feel that it's not just the lack of isolation is one of them. Also, the unknown and the uncertainty is another, because nobody really knows what the world or life is going to be like after COVID-19. Okay. And people have these cognitive biases of how they're dealing with it. And some, they rationalize it and think this is going to go away really fast. And you could see we have political leaders who are really not paying attention in the way they need to. And they're weaving, distorted and untrue realities, which I think is extremely dangerous. And then you have people who exaggerate things and go into hysteria. And the question really is like, what are the opportunities we have now, which is from going from so extroverted to developing a much deeper relationship to ourselves. And that's why I think to stay inspired and to be connected to something greater than oneself and begin to be an inquiry, what is that? What is it that really gives my life meaning? And what is it that gives my life purpose? And one of the ways to track purpose is to start tracking the things that have energy for you, which is outside of your ideas of who you need to be, or you're supposed to be, or you were told to be. So it's outside the shoulds, but it really begin to track what is it that has energy for you and begin to be an inquiry about that. So why am I resonating with this versus that? It's like, so that's one way of tracking purpose. Another is to really look at what causes you very, very deep pain because the things we care about is also part of our purpose.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things for me is, you know, I remember several years ago being in a supermarket, and there was, I think it was Time magazine, and it, I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was during the war in Rwanda, and it was just a picture of a field of dead babies. I mean, it was like, so I just stood there on the spot and just started weeping, you know. But anywhere that women and children are abused is really, really gets my fire. I mean, that's sacred space for me. So my work is about causing transformation in the world through the empowerment of women as leaders. You know, not just empowering women, but to really empower women to come forth and be the leaders and influencers that's possible, because I believe that they can create a change that is deeply needed in the world. So that is my purpose. I mean, I can say it in different ways. But you can track it through what causes you pain, and you can track it through what you resonate with energetically. And I like the sensitizing yourself to what you resonate with energetically, because it takes you outside of your mind and your ideas of what you think is important to you. So that's one way, and you can start tracking, just like we have threads of pain in our life, you can start tracking moments and footprints of essence. And then how do you begin to give voice to that, and time to that, and space to that, and to allow something to emerge. And if you're in a particular work and it's not happening, or you've hit a wall, there's lots of reasons for that. Lots of different reasons for that, you know. So I would have no idea if someone said, I just hit a wall, I would have no idea of that. But one is to look at, does this have energy for you? Are you engaged and involved in something that has energy and has purpose for you? And where do you not believe that it's possible for you to both be engaged and be in purposeful work, and also make the kind of money that you'd really like to make and have the lifestyle that you want?
So it's interesting, because as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, you know, so if we really got back to the essence of who we are, and those things that have energy for us, and were more in line with our purpose and our inspiration, then it wouldn't matter so much what was happening outside, because we'd be happy and satisfied inside.
That's right. And it would also free us, it would free us from that mask we're talking about, and the conditioned way of living, and allow us to become a creative force in what I call, you know, the matter of our own life.
Right.
Okay. And when you're connected to something higher and a higher purpose, you can transcend limitations. You can access possibility beyond anything you ever thought possible. You have more energy. I mean, it really is it's a transformational force to be connected to something greater than oneself, which I'm calling your purpose, and to have that connection, which I call inspiration.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time, because I mean, isn't that the essence of my life, right? For the past 30 years, that, you know, having that bigger goal as a result of my getting the second chance to have a life, right? I should have died and I didn't. So I absolutely get that. The other thing I'm thinking, and I love your take on this, and I hate to get really woo-woo, but I've been feeling through this COVID-19 thing. I've always said, you know, in my head, I probably have never said this out loud in public, but I'll say it anyway. I've always felt like people are so worried about the ozone layer and global warming and the pollution of the planet and the damage that we're doing. And I think we're right to be worried about that. But it takes on a tone that we're almighty beings and we have total control in the universe, and, you know, it's all up to us. And I've always sort of secretly felt that, you know what, when Mother Nature has enough, when the universe has had enough, the universe will create something that will, you know, sort of right-size things, if you will. And I can't help but feel that this is a massive right-sizing, that it's giving people the opportunity to do exactly what you were talking about, and really to sit back and get in touch with, is this who I am? You know, is this who I want to be? Is this what I want to be doing? And if not, this is the time to explore what gives you energy, what doesn't give you energy, where you want to be. Am I crazy to think that way? I've always thought that, but.
Well, there's all these threads here that we're touching. I think it's an opportunity now for people to really reflect on what matters to them. what matters to them. People are in relationships they don't belong in. People are in jobs and work that they really needed to have left a long time ago. There are certain aspects of people's lives they haven't been dealing with for a very long time, right? And so this is an opportunity to be doing all of that. And when you talk about whether it's the, climate change, which I think there's a relative and there's an absolute view to everything. And relatively speaking, I think we made an absolute mess of this planet. Yeah. Absolutely, right? I mean, I'm getting calls from clients. I work with clients all over the world. They've never seen the air, the sky. They've never seen the sky the way it is. And I have a video I can send you of all the animals overtaking all the cities. I don't know if you've seen that video. It's amazing, right? Including 1,000 flamingos flying into a city in India. Just, some of these most exquisite things. People have not seen trees and the sun and the moon. And so there is something about the way in which we have been unconsciously destroying this planet. And this is a much, much bigger conversation, but I'm in touch with several people who are in very high level think tanks. And the biggest change they see coming, and in the next 5 years, is going to be the way in which we make money. Because what we're getting a little brief vacation from is the ways in which we have been destroying this planet. And it's all about the ways in which we make money, whether we look at the oil companies or fracking, or opening up, what we've done to the ozone layer. I heard recently something healed in the sun. Yeah. But that's the whole conversation, right? Maybe that's why they're opening up sunbathing in London. Oh, I don't think that. But I do think the biggest change in the next 5 years is going to be how we make money. And I actually believe the biggest change is going to come from making money through things that are good for humanity and good for the planet. Okay? And that what's going to be dying is all these other ways that we're so deeply attached. Because the only reason we're not giving them up is because, it's ways in which, a lot of companies make money. Yeah. And we never thought about, now it's like there's a whole movement, even just in diet now, there's a whole movement of conscious eating, right?
People are cooking at home, yeah.
And they're cooking at home and they want organic food and they don't, you know what I mean? So there's this whole thinking about that. I don't know anyone who eats processed food anymore, but I might be mistaken. It's just the people I hang out with. But the companies that make processed food are not making their money that way anymore. No. And so I do think there's lots of opportunities in that regard. And also if we go back to connection, we are learning through this how interconnected we absolutely are. Every single person that I know of in 15 different countries, and there's like everyone everywhere, is in having, it's our relationship to our experience that is so uniquely different, but we're all being given so to speak, the same experience.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's an opportunity, as isolated as we are, is to really realize how interconnected we are. One of the things I said to a friend of mine, because we were going back and forth around the condition and how depressed people are, and I said, until everyone's okay, nobody will be okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So this is an opportunity to see that we are all, this is like one whole. We all are interrelated and interconnected.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
How incredibly helpful to sit back and reflect during a very difficult time of who we are and how we can get more connected to our own inspiration. I can't thank you enough, really. And I will put Dr. Rita's website, as I always do, on the last frame. So should you want to get in touch with Dr. Rita, she's a fantastic speaker, a conference moderator. She's a fantastic workshop leader and a fantastic mentor and coach. So thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Info at womenontheleadingedge.com.
Info at womenontheleadingedge.com.
And theleadingedge.com. That's to get in touch with our company. Yeah.
And I will make sure that I post that for everyone on the last frame of this so that people can get in touch with you. Thanks again, Dr. Rita.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Yeah.